Let's talk about what do you actually get with GPUs when you run them. So we saw they have a huge amount of potential, but how much of that potential do you actually get? So here's some information. So they've got developers and speed ups, and a bunch of these are famous. Harvard University, Mass General Hospital, University of Illinois, 300x, 150x, 100x. These are really phenomenal speed ups here. Now if you look at the 300x here, that's pretty impressive given that we saw that the GPU was only theoretically about 15 times faster. So that's pretty impressive speed up. Here's some other data. So here's a bunch of applications or kernels here, and we see some of these you actually get a slowdown, less than 1 times the performance. On one of them you do get 15 times faster, but overall these applications are only showing a speed of about 2.5 times. So what's going on here? Well, to understand this a little better, let's look at where this information is coming from. So this information here is coming from NVIDIA's corporate blog. Okay, so how much can we really trust NVIDIA? Of course they're picking the best things. So this baseline here was probably single-threaded Python code versus massively optimized GPU code. They went from bad CPU code to great GPU code, and they got a huge speed up. How about this information over here? Well, this is coming from a paper. This paper was published in ISCO, which is the Premier Architecture and Performance Conference, so that sounds pretty good. But if we look a little closer here, it was written by a bunch of people at Intel. So this is Intel saying, hey, GPUs aren't that great. So what we see is NVIDIA says, yeah, you get 100x faster on GPUs. Intel saying, no, it's really more like 3 times faster. So what's going on here? Well, let's take a look at some real-world performance. Here's a press release from NVIDIA. NVIDIA announced 4 leading applications, added support for multiple GPU acceleration, cut simulation time from days to hours. So that's great, days to hours. I'm thinking like 24 times faster here. Let's see what they actually got. So GROMACS, LAMPS, and QMCPAC, these are some biology and quantum mechanics applications, 2 to 3 times faster, up to 8 times faster for this one here, but generally 2 to 3 times faster was all they got when they accelerated these programs for multiple GPUs. What did NVIDIA themselves have to say? They had this huge banner, accelerate your code 2 times in 4 weeks, guaranteed. Okay, now let's be honest here, 2 times faster is awesome. That's great if you can get your code to run 2 times faster. Here's just one little problem here. Is it enough to rewrite your code? I mean, would anybody seriously rewrite their code to make it run 2 times faster? And realistically, no. People will only rewrite their code for about a 10x performance improvement. So 2 times faster is not really worth it to rewrite your code. So what was Intel's response to this? Well, they developed this thing called Xeon Phi. And Xeon Phi started out as a complete disaster. It was going to be a GPU killer. It was going to use x86 cores to beat GPUs in graphics. Intel discovered that doing graphics is really hard. They didn't have a chance, and so they said, okay, screw the graphics part. We're just going to compete on performance for scientific computing and acceleration. So what do you got in a Xeon Phi? You get 60 Pentium cores. It's about the same price as a high-end GPU, and it'll run your legacy code. So it runs basically Linux with OpenMP, MPI, standard stuff you'd expect. Now, how good is it? Well, here are the performance numbers we had before, peak performance. Intel's about 6x better than their own processors, but they're about half the performance of the GPUs here. How is it in terms of power? Well, they're the same amount of power as the GPUs, so this isn't looking very good compared to the GPUs. It's half the performance of NVIDIA at the same amount of power. So we look at efficiency here. So Intel's not doing so great. It's about half the efficiency here. It's still about 3 times the efficiency of the CPU, but it's about half the potential efficiency of the GPU. Something really important to keep in mind here, and that's legacy code support. Remember I said people don't really rewrite code for less than a 10x performance improvement? You're not likely to get 10x out of a GPU, so people aren't likely to rewrite their code for that. But if we've got this legacy code supportment, then Intel Xeon Phi is looking pretty good. This is really good enough performance efficiency to get people to use it because they have good enough legacy compatibility. By using x86 and Linux and things that people are familiar with, they've made it much easier to get onto the Intel Xeon Phi, which means you're much more likely to actually get to this sort of improvement without having to rewrite all your code from scratch. And if that's the case, they've got a really compelling solution here, and they're going to do a good job of competing with the GPU market.